When you're recording.
It's recording.
We are recording.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Town of Newington Participation Commission meeting for August 2025. Calling the meeting to order. Would the recording secretary please take the roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Bashand,
Here.
Commissioner Conway, Commissioner Ellis,
Here.
Commissioner Morris,
Here.
Commissioner Ostrinsky, Commissioner Paskowitz, Commissioner Sadil,
Here.
Commissioner Wemette,
Here.
Chairman Zellick.
Here. For the record, Commissioner Paskowitz is online.
Yes, I saw him.
Can you hear us? Can we reach out to Commissioner Paskowitz?
I don't see him anymore.
See him on screen.
He is, huh?
Commissioner Paskowitz, you may be on mute. Can you hear us? Wave if you can hear us.
I can hear you, yes.
All right. There he is.
Looks like we have a full commission this evening, so I'm not going to see any of the alternates. Next item is.
I'm having difficulty hearing you, Chairman Zeller.
Okay, Commissioner Sadel, can you hear us okay?
No, you're very faint. You're very far away. Not clear at all.
Is your mic
Okay,
red or green?
How about now?
Much better.
That's better.
All right, thank you. Going to move on now to approval of minutes from July 15th, 2025. Any corrections to the minutes that any of the commissioners would like to make?
I move to,
Commissioner
Mr. Chairman.
Bashant?
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to read them, so I'll have to recuse myself, or, you know, if it's a big deal to wait a month to approve them.
All right, well, we'll see when we go to vote if we have a quorum.
I move to accept the minutes.
Okay, motion from Commissioner Conway, second by Commissioner Wimett. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
One abstention, Commissioner Bashant. Motion passes. Moving on to public hearing. We do not have anything on the agenda this evening. Next item is public participation on non-agenda items. Speakers are limited to 2 minutes. Any member of the public wishing to speak, please come forward. None in the room. Anyone online?
The only attendees are counselors and.
Okay, very good. Seeing no one for public participation, we'll move on to new business. Nothing new under new business. Moving on to old business. We have application IW-25-11 to extend the parking lot approximately 180 feet and add a retaining wall at the southern portion of the existing parking lot into the historical pad site at 2929 Berlin Turnpike in the PD Plan Development Zone. Applicant BSC Group, contact Frank Vasca, owner Berlin Turnpike 2929 LLC. I believe there were some modifications to the application. And we do have some comments from the town engineer regarding the current site proposal. I would like to read those minutes, or excuse me, not those minutes, but the comments that we received from the town engineer into the record. I don't know if all the commissioners have had a chance to read this, so I want to read it into the application so that we have a good record. And this is an application summary from town engineer Chris Zibido. Says, please note the applicant has submitted revised plans on Wednesday, 8/13/25. So this memo is based on a quick review of these new plans and previously submitted plans. Most notable is the removal of the pedestrian stairs in the adjacent commercial plaza. Applicant is seeking to construct an expansion of an existing parking area for the Casadora Restaurant, the former boutique Bertucci's Restaurant on the west side of the Berlin Turnpike. To achieve the maximum number of parking spaces for the site, this application includes a substantial retaining wall along the west and southern sides of the property. This proposal also includes a novel stormwater treatment and detention system utilizing the landscape islands as a bioswale, then containing the higher level runoff in a subsurface drainage detention pond before excess runoff exits the system on the south. Staff review, the applicant intends to construct an expansion of an existing parking area for the Casadora Restaurant, as just stated. The restaurant has sustained a very high parking demand since opening in the spring, exceeding the required parking from the zoning regulations. The Bertucci's approval called for 109 spaces. Applicant proposes 222 spaces in total, refer to the supplied narrative. As proposal includes a novel stormwater treatment and detention system utilizing the landscape islands as a bioswale, then containing the higher levels of runoff in a subsurface drainage detention pond before excess runoff exits the system on the south. The outlet will utilize a vertical distribution method that is preferable to a traditional flared end on a pipe. This will control outlet velocities and potential erosion on the hillside. This is an interesting system that I believe could serve as a model for this type of stormwater treatment, BMP, best management practice. As a possible extension to this noteworthy runoff treatment is the opportunity to provide some permeable pavement in this new lot to cut down on some of the MS4 impact, primarily increasing impervious surfaces and high stormwater runoff. The total number of spaces will trigger a review from the Office of State Traffic Administration. This is not a matter for review of this commission, but it will add substantial time to the applicant's construction schedule. With this in mind, a reduction to 199 spaces would allow the applicant to reduce his project footprint by about 3,800 square feet. This could be used to pull back from the water course to some extent and preserve some of the tree cover over the water course. This brook is more of an urban drainage swale connecting a wetland habitat on the east side of the Berlin Turnpike to another wetland habitat at Clem-Lemire/transfer station complex. The swale is confined by the surrounding commercial development in this area and is very narrow. The remaining major item is the impact from the wall construction. As proposed, it will require almost all of the buffer trees on the property to be cleared along the south and west boundaries, all within the upland review area. It will also require substantial soil disturbances on the hillside and very little room for additional E&S, erosion and sediment measures, should a major storm develop prior to completion. Staff has reviewed the wall detail and has concerns that this wall can be constructed on this hillside without some test borings or test holes observed by a geotechnical engineer to evaluate the proposed foundation. The wall is as much as 18 feet tall at one point and will support substantial volume of fill and other overburden. Additionally, to install this wall this close to the property boundary, many trees in the neighboring property will be adversely affected, meaning severe damage to the root system. TPZ regulations require trees greater than 6 inches be identified and shown on the plan. This should extend at least 15 feet into the abutter's property, as these roots will extend at least that far. It is recommended that this to be done at this time to show these trees as the root system stabilizes this embankment. As a minimum, a turbidity curtain should be installed across the brook, as we did for the town's work on Green Lawn last month, and this will require the neighbor's written permission. Recommendations: staff recommends requesting the applicant to review the feasibility of reducing the overall size of the expansion and the use of permeable pavement around the bioswales. And that concludes the comments from the town engineer, his review of the plan. So I just made some bullet points to summarize. Number one, addition of permeable surfaces to reduce MS4 stormwater impact. Number two, reduce to 199 spaces to pull back from the water course and preserve tree cover in the upland review area. Number three, impact of retaining wall construction requires all upland review area buffer trees to be removed. Requires substantial soil disturbances on the hillside, no room for erosion and sediment controls, high risk if a major storm develops during the construction phase. Geotechnical tests, borings, and evaluations to support the wall. Impact to abutting property, tree root system. And that's what I have for the concerns as a summary. Anything else to add, Chris, before we turn it over to? Okay, we'll turn it over to the applicant and have them show us their plan and address the concerns that have been raised by the town engineer.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The record, my name is Francis Vaca.
Try and turn your mic on.
Green, there we go. Sorry about that. Again, for the record, my name is Francis Vaca. I'm a professional engineer at the BSC Group in Glastonbury, Connecticut, here on behalf of Doro Restaurant Group and Stay Point Properties. Again, we are here to respectfully request Conservation Commission approval under Section 10 of the latest Newington Inland Wetland Regulations, similar to last time. Again, tonight for the agenda, I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. I'll go through basically the updates that we've made to the plan, and then I will try to address as many of the questions. I will clarify, just for the record, I have not seen the information that the town engineer had submitted until this evening, but I should be able to respond to as many of those questions as I can. So I will attempt to do that. But that's essentially all I'm going to be doing this evening. Try to keep this as straightforward as possible. Again, we're referring to 2929 Berlin Turnpike, the former Bertucci's property. And this is the survey associated with that. I will note, just for the record, that during this interim phase, there has been a silt fence and a erosion berm that had been installed, essentially to prevent any additional disturbance during this time, as we've been negotiating with both the Wetland Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission. There's an update to our erosion sedimentation control plan. The main point I would like to identify is there's a substantial amount of additional shading that you see on the plan. This shading represents any slopes in excess of 15%, which is a requirement for the Newington regulations. So we have added that to all of the plans in the development. Any disturbance within that area, obviously, we'll be coordinating with town staff. There is a question as to whether or not this would need to trigger a public hearing for potential special permit, but that is, I've presented this to Planning and Zoning. I presented this particular issue with regard to the 15% slopes at the previous meeting. And at this point, we are still in the process of a site plan approval. We have added, again, just for clarification purposes, we have the green identified here in the background is the delineated wetland on site. The blue in front of that is the town GIS identified wetland. And then the green and the red lines represent the infield delineated and town upland review boundary areas. As far as erosion sedimentation control, we have added a note on the plan for this green area is our construction washout. Concrete washout area. And again, as far as perimeter controls, I understand Mr. Zebedeo's concern with regard to erosion controls, especially in relation to the wall. One of the main reasons why we are proposing the use of the 12-inch wood chip berm is its substantial increased stability and its substantial increase in filtration and benefit with regard to protecting downstream areas. It's got substantially more mass and filtration possibility, but potential, which is why we are proposing the use of this, and as opposed to simply just an erosion and silt fence. The turbidity curtain obviously is something we can definitely include in the stream area. As far as the site plan update, there are a few minor changes. If I could correct the record, the site plan narrative had not been submitted, had not been updated. The correct number of parking spaces currently being proposed is 218. We are replacing 47 spaces, replacing 47 existing spaces, and we are adding in total 157 additional spaces as identified here. There was a minor change based on the layout associated with nonconformities associated with the permanent monument sign that is currently nonconforming on the property. We had to adjust the curb lines up so we did not modify the sign. As a result of that, it modified we removed the landscape island in the center here. This switched to 18-foot spaces in place of the 16-foot, and everything kind of shifted up as a result of that. There may also be some additional concerns with regard to additional pavement encroaching in this area. I have to examine that, and that will be part of the planning and zoning submission when that gets submitted. Another change was I had designed my initial handicap parking associated with the International Building Code. I did not recall at the time that the state of Connecticut has a more stringent requirement for that. So we went from the 7 or initial proposed up to 9 proposed to satisfy the state of Connecticut Building Code. There's also an area here that is located within the 35-foot front yard where there is additional pavement that is not part of the nonconformity that has been removed and has been converted to snow storage, which is the reason why there is a slight reduction in our total requested number of parking spaces. And this addresses some of the concerns with regard to the non-conforming pavement inside the 35-foot front yard. There's also been added onto the plan something that was just recently approved by planning and zoning. We had just missed it in our previous initial submission, which is the requirement to provide infrastructure for 10% of the site for EV chargers. Now, just to clarify, it's infrastructure, so it's essentially the conduits and the connections for potential chargers, not the chargers themselves. So we are showing potential infrastructure for it, but not the actual chargers. One of the main talking points in the previous meeting was about the wall identified here in yellow. This is the detail that is, it's a generic detail that is essentially identifying how the wall essentially is constructed. So yes, we would be approximately 5 feet from the property line here to install this main structure. Now, this is a general detail. So essentially what will happen is the developer essentially chooses which of the types of wall manufacturers that they would go with, and they independently provide a engineered design for the wall. So essentially in this situation, because we have trees, because we have other sensitive resource areas, there are options with the wall design that we can essentially coordinate with the chosen wall developer to try to minimize as much of the impacts to the adjacent resource areas and the adjacent trees in the area. There will still be impacts associated with that. Our erosion and sedimentation control plan will account for the phased approach in order to get this wall to be installed. And that will be coordinated during construction, but it's again, I certain areas, for example, the 12 inches in front of the wall here that would essentially encroach that much closer to the property boundary, that can be negotiated based on the ability and the specific design that will come out of the wall manufacturer when we were to request the design from them. I know it was identified in the previous meeting. I spoke about the focal point, the bioretention water quality structure I provided. I actually pulled some additional information from previous presentations to kind of present a little bit more information on this. I know there were some number of questions on the design. So again, for low impact development, reduces impervious cover, slows runoff, separates treatment areas. So essentially this is essentially what the islands that we are proposing would look like. Instead of the grate being on the end, it would actually be in the middle and would receive flow from both sides. What's identified here is actually the bioretention area. So water flows into this area and will settle. It's treated by the plants and the media within the bioretention area, and then it will filter down. To look a little bit more in detail of the design, so this is the pre-treatment structure. Instead of just using a simple pave leak off where water will water will flow off of the pavement just into a grassed area, this is a pre-treatment structure that actually collects a lot of the large refuse type sediment and so on the top. It will filter down into this shallow, it's only about 12 inches deep, and it will be essentially collected against this screen. There's actually like a fine mesh in front of this larger screen. The intent behind this is as sediment kind of fills into this structure, it fills up, and then it will continue to function effectively even though that there's a sediment layer. And then the benefit is this top grate structure can be locked in place, but it's light enough that a single individual can lift it and essentially can get cleaned just by a landscaper with a shovel, as opposed to a standard catch basin where you have to use a vac truck and you have to clean out the sumps and you have to get jets to clean out all the piping and so on. So it's much more user friendly from a maintenance standpoint.
Is that vertical bar going across there? Is that a baffle for floating debris?
This baffle right here.
Yes.
So basically what happens is this drops directly down into this opening, and then this grate sits directly on top of that. If I go back up to this, you could see.
I'm saying, is the idea to hold floatables behind that?
Yeah, so the floatables like refuse and so on basically collect, on the top here, and like bottles and so on and so forth. And then anything finer that will drop into the structure itself, it is contained inside there, so that any like wrappers or contaminants or any of those type of things are basically right there at the surface.
Thinking about the amount of litter we have lately around,
Yep.
That's going to require some pretty regular maintenance.
They've designed it, and as small as it is, actually it is quite wide in diameter, and they have designed all of their products, and that's why I specifically like working with this company. They've designed all their products to account for those type of things. They recognize that a landscape crew is most likely only going to come through here once or twice a year. So they've designed their systems to be able to, as something gets clogged, it basically lifts up a bit more, and it's intended to be designed to hold a certain amount of sediment and contaminants through a longer period of time. If it were to be fully clogged, the reason why there's a small step in the structure is basically it just overtops. Now, you can remove the structure entirely and it still functions effectively because it drains directly into the actual treatment system. So this is providing your pre-treatment. If it were to be fully failed, for example, it just bypasses it directly into the bioretention swale and that becomes your pre-treatment. So it's a number of lines of defense. And then this is what the actual swale looks like. So when you have your pre-treatment structure will be up here. It discharges into the system itself. So you have 3 inches of mulch, standard mulch. There's nothing complicated about it. It gets replaced every year, and that actually provides up to 90% of the actual sediment loading removal, because as it filters through the mulch, all of the larger particles of sediment are collected. And then when the landscape crew comes through to do their mulch every year, they take out the mulch, they put in new, and you've just removed all of your contaminants. Any contaminants that make its way through the mulch goes into, it's called this high flow media. It is a proprietary media. It runs at about 100 inches per hour, but it's got a very small amount of organics in it. And the organics, basically, they essentially chew on all of the contaminants that come off of the vehicles. And it's basically a self-healing system. So they use the nutrients that are provided from the contaminants and it continues to recycle itself. So the maintenance actually on the high flow media they have case studies showing that it continues to provide greater than 80% TSS removal for 10 years or longer. And then once you get through that, and then also there's all of the landscaping that is proposed is specifically designed to uptake any phosphorus, nitrogen, any of the typical types of contaminants that come off of vehicles. It filters down through the media into the bridging stone and then into this, it's essentially a milk crate structure, which is the detention. In this case, the detention will store and provide the peak flow attenuation so that we're not increasing the amount of flow off the site. So it all works as kind of a symbiotic system. And the benefit of this is you've eliminated all of your catch basins and pipes. So essentially everything sheet flows to this system and then is treated. Anything that's larger than what can run through the 100 inches per hour basically will fill up. This is kind of, the graphic is not very accurate, but essentially this will fill up and then overtop into an overflow. So anything larger than your 10-year storm or so will overtop. Again, the graphic is not accurately represented, but it will drop into the detention and everything is collected behind the outlet, outlet structure so that any of the water is still contained. It doesn't immediately leave the system. It's contained in there and then slowly released over time.
Once the retention container is full, though, it'll flow out.
Yes, and
That's
the
like by that
detention, it will hold, it will fill up. The detention is sized to be able to accommodate up to the 100-year storm. So that's essentially how we've, you design the amount of storage that you provide will handle the amount of flow required. And so it slowly releases over time.
Flows straight out.
That's correct. So the purple here is actually, hold on. All right, so this area right here that's the bioretention area itself. That's what's providing the water quality treatment here and here. But the larger purple is the actual tank itself that's below grade. So the flow runs across the pavement, gets into the basin, is treated, drops down, and then it drops directly into the system. And then this system fills up. I don't have the exact dimensions on the height of the system, but as it fills up and then when it gets released, it goes through the outlet protection structure right here and then discharges over to the outlet control. I'm sorry, not the outlet control, the main discharge point. The discharge point, there was some clarification requested in the initial comments. So we've provided some further detail on this. Again, there will be an additional detail provided cross-section so that's clear. But yes, as the flow enters through into this small concrete structure, it's about 2 feet deep. This will fill up full of water and then it overtops into this stone area. The stone area has been graded so that it's level. There was concern brought up at the last meeting about, well, how do we ensure that we're not going to wash out any of the stone along this slope? So what I've done from a belts and suspenders standpoint is I've used the Connecticut DOT drainage manual. I've designed this scour hole pad to essentially treat the flow from a 12-inch flared end. So essentially, if this were a flared end flowing directly out of the roadway, there is a certain calculation that you would follow in order to design the size of the stone requirement to reduce your velocity of the water running out so that it's not going to create any additional erosional velocities once it gets beyond the edge of that. So I've designed this stone pad to basically satisfy that, but it will never receive that because it's going to receive zero velocity every single time it's receiving discharge. So
Is
Go
that
ahead.
the vertical distribution method that Chris referred to?
That's
in his
correct.
memo?
That's correct. So the way that the slopes of this kind of function, essentially the water will basically pond up in here and then it will slowly leak off and then down the slope towards the wetland adjacent to this area. That is essentially the changes. Hold on. Those are the changes that were made. I know that there were a number of comments that were brought up in the meeting. I don't remember all of them directly, but I can do my best to provide some backup or response to those.
So in the engineer's report, he mentions that the employee walkway Yes, staircase has been removed. You want to speak about that a little bit? What was the reason for removing that?
So after, one of the reasons why we are requesting the higher number of spaces that we are, I did some analysis to determine that right now they are renting, I believe it's 50 spaces from the Price Chopper Plaza. They only have a 1-year lease on it. I believe it's 1 year, maybe even by month. Yeah, so they could choose at any time to say, we're not going to renew your lease. So we calculated at most, they have seen, at peak season with the restaurant running on a Saturday night with full reservations, they see upwards of 50 employees. So I verified that we can essentially place 50 employees. If we were to imagine that one employee drives him or herself individually, there are still a greater number of spaces with 50 spaces accommodated for employees, in addition to that for the users of the restaurant. So as a result of that, and a result of the fact that because we were on an adjacent property and they could at any time choose to revoke the lease, the decision was made by the development team that the staircase was just not a viable pathway to move forward.
Thank you. Any follow-up comments, Chris?
My only comments are, excuse me. I love the detention system. The retaining wall, not so much.
Mhm.
Might simply be schematic. Could be better.
Yep.
Cross section. It doesn't. Give me that, let's say, more fuzzy I get from the final design.
Understood.
So, other than the retaining wall, simply to the property lines, and the fact that so much of it is in the view area, I have no objection to this application.
Mhm.
I would love to see that detention system working. I think that is a novel approach to it.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think Chris's microphone is on if he's speaking.
Thank you. Commissioner Siddall.
My microphone was not on. Thank you. So I would love to see this thing built because this would be a model BMP. I really do like the concept a lot. And again, my only objection really is how close it is to the property line on such a steep slope. If this was a flat site, this would be an easy application. But it's not, and that's why we're here. So this is the challenge, is to determine how we want to approach this retaining wall and the number of spaces, and that's your task.
Yeah, so I didn't really have an issue with, a parking lot here because it was a pad site. As long as that parking lot could be placed here on the existing, up to the existing edge of slope. The addition of the retaining wall introduces, quite a bit of a challenge. We do have regulations, I think section 6, which we protect vegetative buffers to the wetlands. Asking to remove all the vegetation, the trees in the upland review area is a big ask, especially since we don't have any type of inventory of what those trees are. We can't just say, yes, go ahead and, eradicate what's over there without us even knowing what is in that area. So I think, we would need at least an inventory of what's there. Make sure we're not approving an application that could potentially, impact the habitat. There could be potentially habitat there. I don't know what's in there. Right?
So the
I know there's a
tree-
drainage ditch.
Yeah.
I know it's not a valuable wetland,
Right.
but to completely deforest an upland review area, that's a big ask, not knowing what's in there.
So the tree inventory aspect of it is a planning and zoning requirement. So I don't feel it's a big burden for you guys to do that at this time, because you're gonna have to do it when you go to see Paul anyway. So that I think would clear up a lot of the questions about what's in there and how close it is to, the construction limits and that sort of thing. damage to root zones and all of the usual things associated with that.
I would be much more comfortable if we had, you know, a quick third-party review. Someone like a Mr. Logan, look at the area, give us his impression.
What I can say with regard to that
Well,
is,
Did your soil scientist look at any of this?
All Points was the original soil scientist. When they provided us the soil analysis of the area. I believe it was a one pager. I do not have off the top of my head recollection of that. Joe, you wouldn't happen to know off the top of your head. Okay. With regard to the quality, what I can provide information based on, so at the previous zoning meeting, we did have an individual who was quite familiar with the area. We had Mr. Morrison come to speak, not on behalf of anything. He was providing just a third-party information, knowing the history of the site, and the information that he did provide to us is that the entire, well, let me actually show it to you, it's easier. So this entire area identified here, that is essentially, it looks like a rectangle because it is man-made. It was, I think he said somewhere in the neighborhood of 1955. This entire, it was the slope that is just wet, I'm sorry, just south of this area, that slope originally used to continue up through the Berlin Turnpike edge that entire way. This entire area was independently, or I should say, was filled on or around the 1950s area for, I don't know exactly what the purposes were for. So what I'm trying to get to with this is, yes, I do recognize that there is plantings and so on in there at this time, which can be inventoried. Is just, this is, whatever is there is not like original forested area from the town that has been here for eons type of thing. So anything that is there is at most 70 to 80 years old. Now, there's nothing to say that 70, 80 years is not substantial enough. I'm just trying to provide clarification that it is not historic, I guess is the right way to put it.
I understand it was a gas station.
Yes, there was a gas station originally here. This used to be a Shell station, and then right around the center site was actually a residence. And then right around in the general vicinity of the current Bertucci's, and then extending out in this was the original Mortenson's Dairy. But yes, he said, so this entire area was paved. That's more information that we were providing to planning and zoning. But yes, this area was filled at one point. The stream that was originally running, I don't exactly know its route, but they basically rerouted it around the fill after they filled everything in. So anything that has grown there is probably no more than 70 to 75 years old. Yes, it is a requirement to provide the inventory. It is extremely steep, and we can very easily provide the inventory, but I don't believe there will be a resulting benefit to keeping any of those trees at this point. Not ever going to keep them all down, but it's one of those that they are not providing any substantial environmental benefit.
I just want to make a comment that as a conservation commission, I think we need to do the due diligence on this, because there has been some public opinion out regarding tree removal recently in the town. So I just want to be sensitive to that and make sure that we do our due diligence before we, go forward with any type of an approval.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
And Andreas
Bouchard.
has his hand up too.
All right, we'll go Commissioner Bouchard, and then we'll go, who else?
Andreas.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner. All right, we'll go Commissioner Siddell, and then we'll go Commissioner Bouchard.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, one thing that concerns me with this application is that the pencil isn't exactly down on this, and the commission is being asked to make an opinion or make a judgment on it. So I am concerned as a point of order, not having the full plan in front of us and approved, at least from an engineering standpoint. I appreciate Mr. Vaca has stamped the prints, but the pencil isn't exactly down, and it does influence the upland review area. So that does trouble me a little bit that we don't have a solid proposal subject to change, yet the clock is ticking on this permit. So I don't know, Mr. Chairman, how you want to approach that, but that would be my concern. Second concern is I did read in the narrative that the adjacent property will be impacted by this, by the upland review area, the tree cutting and construction. Where are they here at they should be here. I don't know if we're gonna have a public hearing in order to do that, but certainly want, since they are impacted by this, application, they should have a say at some point. So, those just two comments I want to say up front, and, I have a few other comments later, but that's just two things as a logistical point of view that concern me.
And I'll respond. I'll say I agree completely with the first point. I don't think the pencil's down yet. I know that the applicant just heard this evening, the engineer's concerns. So I'm expecting that there may be some modifications to the plan based on those comments to address those concerns.
There are can you go through the remainder of the concerns?
The remainder of the.
Well, because you had mentioned where there were a number of bullets. I just wanted to
Right,
clarify.
okay, so
From the engineer.
from the town engineer.
I was
Right.
gonna address one of those too, so.
Right, so we still need to get to the commission to talk about these, but these are generated by the town engineer, so I'll just go through them. There may be additional concerns that the commission raises. So number one was the addition of permeable surfaces to reduce the MS4 stormwater impact. Number two was reduce to 199 spaces to pull back from the water course and preserve the tree cover in the upland review area. Third was impact of retaining wall construction in that it requires all upland review buffer trees to be removed, requires substantial soil disturbance on the hillside, no room for erosion and sediment controls, high risk of stormwater, high risk if a major storm develops during the construction phase, the need for geotechnical test borings and evaluations to ensure that the wall can be supported, impact to the abutting property tree root system. So those were the concerns that I took from the engineer's memo. If the commission, go ahead, I'll let you respond.
Sure, absolutely.
We'll turn it over to commission.
I can't recall all of them at once, but so one of the main items there with regard to I know that the whether the pencil is down or not. The only information I can provide is my industry standard knowledge for this in particular is typically a design such as this does get a proprietary after the fact design for the wall design, mostly because there are so many different wall design options. So essentially it was in order for me to provide the finished design for that, we need to kind of move forward with, not with construction, but we need to get to the point where we get a wall contractor or someone on board to provide additional information on that. I have reached out to one in particular. They have provided me some feedback on this and some various options that can go, but there are multiple other wall design options that are available. I am hesitant to require the developer to commit to one of these designs without further information, and that's one of the concerns that I have with this. I don't know how Mr. Zebedee would feel about like a conditional approval of the requirement for engineered wall design that will take all of these considerations into account, in particular the trees and so on. There, like for example, I'll provide you some background. There is one wall system I'm aware of. It's a mechanically stabilized wall where instead of using wall blocks and so on, it's actually built in layers of essentially earth. They're sections of screen almost that are basically installed in a step, and as you install it, you basically install a reinforced layer of earth and it keeps going up from there. it's an option as a proposed wall system that would be less intrusive than a standard modular block wall. But again, I have a hard time committing the developer to, well, this is what we have to go for. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if Mr. Zebedeo would be on board with a conditional, as long as we get a engineered design stamped by a structural engineer that says this wall system will satisfy the requirements of a structural stable and safe design from a parking lot standpoint, while also taking into consideration the impacts associated with this wall adjacent to the property line and the wetland system. I don't know if the commission would be intrigued or interested in something like that.
So just to throw in my 2 cents in on this, I would have to personally support a condition like that for, if no other reason, when I was in his shoes, it was nearly impossible to get a fully engineered wall design prior to land use commission applications. So I've been where he is. I know where he's coming from. And I also understand where it's an imposition on the property owner to say, I've got to have that engineered stamped plan for the retaining wall, because typically the site engineers don't design the retaining walls. I think it would be hypocritical of me to say I have to have that wall designed now that I'm on this side of the table, because when I was on his side, that was the practice. You just, logistically, you can't get that design when you'd like it at this point in the game. So I would accept that as a condition, that it be a designed, structurally designed wall when the time comes. And that if we have to postpone some of these geotechnical questions until that time, we can do that as a staff review and then an agent communication to the commission as to what was done when this time comes. So the wall design is less of my personal concern for tonight. It's that in the upland review area aspect of this, if we can find some way to reduce it a little bit and still meet your obligations, that's what I'd like you to take a look at and see if you can reduce this to some extent so that we can pull it away from the property lines a little bit. So yes, I'm okay with a condition for the design. I'd still like you to look at whether or not there's any way to say, cut the corners off of the most serious parts of the slope, or, and again, this is where my comment came from about the wall design. If this wasn't such a severe slope, and it is, then I could see that wall section being one of the several options available to you. I've used that wall. I've used the Atlas block equivalent of it. I like these products. They work well, even in an application like this. But at 18 feet on a slope, I have some concerns. That's what I'd like you to take a look at and see if there's anything you can do with that. And I do. And I also, just on the record in front of everybody, I want to apologize that you didn't get my comments prior to coming in tonight.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss them. So, all right, no, that's fine.
I knew you were on vacation. I didn't send them. So
understand.
I know that's a lame excuse. I should have sent them to you anyway. But it wasn't in my mind with my own workload that I was going to send it to you knowing you weren't going to read them. So that's why you didn't get them prior to the meeting. I don't like to do that. I don't like it when it happens to me. So I do apologize to you and to Joe for that aspect of this.
No,
Should have
I
sent it
understand.
last week when I wrote it. I think I wrote it Thursday as the packets were going out.
That's fine. No, I understand.
Okay, Commissioner Bashan?
We have a few points here. First of all, I agree with the engineers about the design, final design. It seems to be more of a engineering issue, structural issue, as opposed to an environmental impact issue. But I would, and as far as the tree inventory goes, I hope it's going to include the trees that are off-site that were mentioned that are of some threat within 20, what'd you say, 20 feet or?
A typical, say, 6-inch diameter tree is going to have a drip edge of something like a 20-foot diameter, so 10 feet to 15 feet out from the bowl. And that's
Those trees would be included in the inventory.
and that's because they're required by our zoning regulations. So no, they're not required in our Conservation Commission regulations, but they are required there. He's also had this application in before the Planning and Zoning Commission concurrently. So I didn't think it was a big ask to say, listen, you're gonna have to do this anyway. So let's try to get on the plans before you get in front of TPZ. Is it next
It's supposed to be next Wednesday.
Next
We
Wednesday?
are,
TPZ requires the off-site trees to be included.
No, they require his trees, but in this case, because he's within 6 feet of the property line,
Mm.
that's my ask, is to say what's going to be impacted by
Sure, we get that.
construction activity.
Everyone agrees.
Well, we need it for ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about
Well, yeah, I'm
TPZ.
just
If
saying,
they
yeah.
need it, they should ask for it as well.
And then you mentioned the steep slope permit. That has nothing to do with us. That's a TPZ purview, correct?
that's correct.
And then Chris had mentioned a mid-construction or during construction storm event that could cause a failure. How serious of a failure are we talking about?
Enough that I thought a turbidity
major-
curtain. Well, yeah, I mean, a
Major
25 years,
blowout of the embankment?
a 25-year storm during construction of the wall, depending on how much of the slope is exposed.
Regardless of their ENS measures, which are not, you said that there's a limit on what could even be done with that.
Right, we had a couple of 25-year storms while the property across from the Rockhole subdivision on Church Street were being developed, and they washed out into the Rockhole Brook. The complaints came in against the Rockhole developer. He hadn't really, it wasn't his ENS that was failing. It was the one across the street, but to the average eye, a dirty brook is a dirty brook. So when we did our green lawn application just a few weeks ago, the town bought a turbidity curtain to put in across that to catch any of the sediment that we would disturb, because we were actually doing work in the waterway. I would recommend a method like that, just as a protection against this, I'm going to call it a potential erosion problem, should a storm come along while we have that entire hillside unprotected.
And that's, I've implemented turbidity curtains in the past. It's a very minimalistic approach to provide.
I'd just like
Some
to add
additional.
that, talk about the tree and the roots and that there may not be that high of a value tree, but the roots there have been stabilizing that embankment successfully for all this time. So you know, we're removing the trees, and then we're gonna have to have a man-made stabilization, obviously.
Mhm.
So, and then the point about that being just stormwater runoff, it is, you know, that's channel there, but it does flow into a high, you know, value ecosystem, which is at Clem Lemire. It's a large, you know, productive wetland. So that is what we're trying to protect, not that channel per se, you know. And then the last thing, and this may be the biggest thing, there was a suggestion, I guess it was just a suggestion by the engineer about reducing the total parking. And would that, if you did follow that suggestion, would that reduce some of the needed retaining wall and work on that edge? Because an 18-foot high retaining walls, that's pretty challenging to begin with. So if there was a reduction in parking, how much would that help with, like what Chris was saying, cutting some corners on the walls?
Potentially, we obviously were our main goal was to try to provide ample parking in the event that to alleviate any safety concerns, which was the main reason for the majority of us being here today, but also for providing employee parking. In this case is, you know, because of the popularity of this restaurant and their need for a higher amount of employee parking is the other. So we did investigate some. There is the potential for there to be some potential benefit, but it's the difficult part becomes where if you pull if you even 5 feet, if you pull 5 feet in, all of your dimension calculations are now off. So it's one of those where, like, all right, if you pull 5 in here, that's, you know, here now your aisle's off, now your park is off. And trust me, because I had to renegotiate in order to figure out how to get now that we couldn't move the sign, how do I stack all of this so I still have adequate safety for my 24 feet for my fire truck and so on. The amount of reduction in the spaces to get a major benefit in the reduction in the wall, I think it would be there would be too much of a loss in the parking for it to be adequate. And in other words, what I'm trying to say here is it's not like, well, we'll take out these 4 spaces. I got to take out like 19 spaces for it to actually benefit. You know what I mean?
20 if you followed Chris's narrative or thought, but because you're at 218 now, correct?
218, yes.
Total. And what is the total number of new spaces being proposed?
157.
157. So if you took 20 out of that, I'm just, again.
Yep, understand.
Just thinking how that, if that would help with all these other issues that everybody has, especially with the encroachment of that boundary line.
It is definitely something I can take back and have the discussion with the developer, yes.
Chris, how far back would they have to pull that wall to not impact the trees or the property owner on the other side?
For the property owner on the other side of either boundary, 4 to 9 feet would do it. I also realize from Frank's comments that that's probably not workable in its entirety.
You wouldn't have to change anything because then you would just drive through.
So this is the challenge for him is to see if he can reduce it at all and still meet Joe's requirements. I recognize that. It might just be a thought exercise. It might be no real ability to do that and still get the number of spaces they need. In my quick looking at it, I thought perhaps the southwest corner could be cut off and pull that wall back into the property and reduce the height of the wall in that corner by something like 4 feet. That reduces some of that impact to an extent. It would save a little bit of effort all around, so to speak. You know, construction effort is less, and so that sort of thing. But I don't know if it's going to provide, you know, the turning radiuses in the parking area,
Okay,
the things that he would then have to
Right.
actually look at.
but we don't know until they go through that exercise.
Correct.
So it sounds like it's an exercise worth doing. All right. I had another comment. So I thought I heard you say that the concern was a 25-year storm event would cause a catastrophe.
I cited the 25-year storm because we have experience with that in the Rockwell area.
Okay, we have experience with that. But this past weekend was the 1-year anniversary of that catastrophe in Oxford, and I think that was a 1,000-year storm.
That was.
So, I mean, I think we should think a little bit higher than 25-year to be on the safe side.
Okay. I mean, his detention is sized for the 100, and that's the goal. That's what we usually, as a industry
The
standard
detention,
practice.
right. but
Detention, yeah.
I'm talking about your erosion and
UNS?
sediment controls failing during construction if a major storm came through.
All right. So I think, Frank, we have some homework. We have to look at the state guidelines on soil and erosion control and see what they mandate.
Well, to clarify that is all of the designs of our erosion controls follow the 2000, in this case, it's now the 2024 erosion sedimentation control guidelines. So any of the erosion control that we provide on here is intentionally designed based on those guidelines. So we follow whatever the state's minimum requirements are with that. As far as the stipulation from the state is if it's greater than 5 acres, you have to have a fully engineered, essentially, we'll call it a sediment trap. So a fully engineered basin to be able to handle the flows associated with that. Less than that, you are able to do individualized sediment traps, which are a much smaller calculation. In this type of design, especially with the wall system, and this is something that is also supported by the wall manufacturers. They will provide you essentially like a phased plan, and those phased plans can be individually, you know, controlled from an erosion standpoint. But again, I can't provide that information to the commission at this time because we don't have the finalized design for that. But again, they don't want their wall systems to fail either. So all of these things are taken, and everyone is quite aware that storm systems are nothing but getting larger than smaller, especially obviously situations like Oxford and that tragedy. So it's definitely at the highest level when these designs are getting put forward. And our erosion control plan that we provide as part of the documents from a construction standpoint to the contractors include not only all of the information from the 2024 guidelines, but also basically the standard DOT guidelines for, you know, in the event of a storm, you will do all of these measures and so on. This site is not large enough to qualify this to be a general permit where it would have to be registered with the state. They are they have to sign on to it in order to do something like that in that case, but that because of the size of the site, it's not necessary in this case. But all of that information is still provided to the contractor, and it is critical for them during this construction to ensure that certain things like that are maintained. There is always there's always the chance, but you know, I try to ensure that my erosion control plans, because what you don't see on, it's provided in the document, but what you don't see on the ENS plan that I just have provided in this is all of the note information that also goes with this, that kind of lays out, these are all the steps that you have to take. Here's a construction sequence you have to follow. Here is all the detailed information on how to install all of these controls. This is the correct way to install a turbidity berm. You know, if you're on a slope of certain steepness, there's a certain number of stakes you have to place into your wood chip tube and so on. So there's a bunch of additional information provided to the contractor to ensure that, and everything is followed in accordance with the Connecticut manual.
And I just want to follow up on the inventory. You're open to a third-party reviewer coming in and doing the inventory and providing us with an environmental impact assessment?
I'm not sure we can get one in a month. That's my only worry.
An environmental inventory of the benefit.
Environmental scientists, or right, that's the right term, environmental scientist.
Somebody
perform the
like
inventory.
George, a soil
Give us-
scientist.
Right, give us
Yep.
an environmental impact assessment. So someone like Logan is both a soil scientist and an environmental scientist, right?
Yes.
I can provide one probably within a month, but it would have to be from BSC because we have the capabilities of, we have biologists on staff, we have soil scientists, wetland scientists on staff, but it would be, that's the only way I could probably get the time frame to work for that. If the concern would, and all of my ecologists and biologists come from Worcester, from my Worcester office. They don't, you know, I understand they're a part of the BSC.
Right, okay. So
Realm,
can we
but-
just leave it at you and Chris will talk about it and figure out whether we get someone like George Logan, or, you know, we let BSC do their own?
We can have this chat tomorrow.
Sure.
I mean, if it had to be if you wanted independent though, that doesn't sound like it would be independent. These their own in-house people.
I'm a little less worried about that. I'm not concerned about BSC's people putting their thumb on the scale, so to speak.
Well, just for the record, it
We'll
wouldn't be independent.
open it up, let the mission talk about it.
I just had one more question, if I might.
Go ahead, Commissioner Bashan.
Is there any possibility, I mean, I'm assuming that you got some rough estimates on this wall. Is there any possibility that it just turns out to be cost prohibitive, just the wall itself? And then it forced you to pull back anyway?
We haven't gotten any direct estimates yet, but there are different options that, you know, I've received one estimate. I haven't received a quote yet, but this is what this would take to do it. And here are 3 different wall options that you could potentially
That was
use.
not cost prohibitive.
But I have not reviewed the numbers with the developer at this point.
That's what I'm thinking. That is gonna be quite an undertaking.
Yes, we recognize that.
And well, I'll just throw this out there because only because Chris has raised the issue of reducing parking spaces. That entire west side, there's 27 or 28 spots there right now. If you eliminated those, would that reduce the wall considerably? Or, I mean, because you'd still have an aisle to drive through there if you just reduce those parking spaces, pull them back, whatever, pull that 10 feet back. Would that make a significant difference on that embankment?
There is a potential to make a significant benefit there, but again, it all
I'm
goes
just saying
to,
this so that you didn't
right.
have to readjust the
No.
entire lot.
right. No, I recognize that. It would have to, at this point, it would have to come to the, you know, what is it's the cost ratio of can we handle a reduction in 19 spaces, essentially.
It'd be more like.
It's 28 spaces.
28, right.
So you would still add an additional, well, you'd have 122 for customers using the 50 number for the workers.
Right.
If you did go that route, you could probably still get some parallel parking in.
There you go. And that would probably reduce some of the tree cutting potentially.
It's definitely something we can at least have the conversation.
All right, Commissioner Wilmette?
Yes, so I'm looking at this wall here,
Yes,
okay, you're gonna bring cars right up to the wall,
yes,
okay, and there's 28 cars?
yes.
And this thing's, how long is the wall approximately?
That wall is probably in the neighborhood of 10, 9, that's
I guess.
We're probably-
75.
yes,
180.
yeah, something along those lines. Yes, exactly.
And so for 28 cars, you're gonna build a wall 18 feet tall, 200 feet long?
No, the highest point in the wall is, if you can see my cursor, is right there. That's approximately 18. As this wall continues across, it continues to follow up the slope. So the steepest point is at
Okay,
18
alright.
feet here, but as this goes up, when it gets to this point over here, the wall is only about 2 feet high.
I'm sorry, can you show again where the
Sure.
steepest part is? Is it by the
The
corner there?
steepest part is right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's right here. That's about 18 feet. It kind of goes up. This is about 16 feet here, if I recall my grading plan, and then it slowly goes up slope as it catches up the slope.
What's here? I forgot, there's a building here.
I'm sorry, I can't see the plan.
I'm sorry, but like, in other words, what's here?
Oh, that is the Laser Quest Plaza or Laser, whatever that. Yeah, exactly.
So if I'm to drive my car into one of that parking spot near the wall at its highest point,
Yes.
what do I see, as a driver? Is there a wall in front of me? I mean, I get out of my car, is there,
So there's
Be a guardrail and a fence, I hope.
there's a guardrail and a fence. So there's a guardrail, we're proposing a timber guardrail. It will be designed and in coordination with the wall engineer to ensure to be able to, there is a design that is required for them. They have to provide adequate support to ensure that there is a guardrail. It's a guide rail, to clarify for the record. It does not guard anything. It guides people in this case, and the design of that is intended, you cannot plan for the eventuality that if someone decides to start back here and drive at 30 miles an hour, this guardrail is intended to, as you're slowly pulling in your parking space, if you accidentally hit the gas instead of the brake, you're not going to drive off the bank, but it's not going to save you if you're going 100 miles an hour. And then there is a guide fence, so at least 5 feet tall fence. The fence there's a design associated with that. There was a request during the comments that we received from the town was the clarification of detail for that. There is a detail specifically designed, at least for the wall system, that is currently thought about, that basically installs the fencing behind the wall itself. There's a mechanism that they have developed to install that. So that's where that was going to be. So essentially, if you'll be looking at your guardrail, which is regular guardrail height, your fence, and then, it is not our intent to clear all of the trees. So you will still see some of the tree on the adjacent property, which will go down this bank, go down this bank to the stream. And I don't recall off the top of my head, but I believe there's a small section of trees before you actually get to the Laser Quest building.
you said you don't plan to clear the trees on the adjacent property.
No, that was I misspoke. In other words, there are trees on the adjacent property. Obviously, they're not getting cut down. There will be some trees in front of you as you're parking in that lot.
In the property line, I know that building this wall so close to the property line was a concern. How close is the wall to the wetland?
The closest the wall gets to the wetland is probably this point right here. And that's probably in the neighborhood of, I believe this is 9.9 feet, which is the edge to here. So you're probably looking at 18 feet plus or minus to the edge of the wetland.
The wall is approximately 18 feet from the wetland line.
Yes. And again, sure.
Any plans to revegetate that area below the retaining wall?
Yeah, so it may, although may not be shown on our landscape plan, what would essentially happen in that case is at the final conclusion of the project, we would essentially, in that case, probably put some type of no-mow, either we call it an erosion control mix, but it's basically a mix it's like a wildflower mix that basically is also benefits. It's a pollinator mix, but it basically will lock everything into place and does not need to be mown over time, with the intent that the natural vegetation adjacent to it will make its way back in. Exactly.
They're not going to be plantings put back in there.
No, there wouldn't be enough. Okay. There wouldn't be enough room, and there wouldn't be enough light.
Yeah. All right, commissioners, any other questions? Commissioners online? I see a hand up.
Andrea says his hand up, yes.
Commissioner Siddell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions about that wall. Why does it have to be 18 feet? Why does it have to be that tall on the corner and you're tapering down? Why does it have to be 18 feet high?
In order to satisfy the requirements to allow for drainage of this area to get to the low impact development drainage, my initial design had it pitching the opposite direction to reduce the height of the wall. The problem with that was I was putting my drainage much too close to the edge of the wall, and it only saved because the way that the slope of you can't go any steeper than 5% on a parking lot, or else the doors will close on you. The reduction in height of the wall was less than a foot. So given that information,
I'm having a hard time understanding what the height of the wall. This is more of a grading issue.
The slope, in order to allow for the drainage of the parking lot to get to the stormwater system, I needed to set the grades of the parking lot a certain elevation to allow to maintain positive drainage to the system. And as a result of that, it generated a height of the wall at its highest point of approximately 18 feet, which is approximately this location, because that happens to be that is the highest differential between the proposed to get the drainage to work and the existing site, because we're going around the corner. And that is the lowest point of the existing site that we are essentially interacting with.
So what would happen if it was only like 5 feet tall? Just try to school me on this. Why, if it's just a 5-foot wall, for instance, you got a height of a wall, you're going up, but you want to have a draft down on the ground. How does that influence? I'm not quite seeing it. I'm sorry. Why?
Sure. No, that's fine. That's fine. So this would be at 0. So the slope along this wall is continuous, plus or minus. So we're right at around elevation 134 here. We're at 133 right here. So it's reasonably level along the top of this slope. But as you're running along the bottom, we're starting here. This is about, we'll call this 130, 131 plus is 130. So this is probably 132. So as we go, this is 132, 131, 30 as you go down. So as the wall is increasing in height as you go, and the lowest point adjacent to the wall is here at 18 feet. As you go up in this direction, you're going from 18 up to 16. And then as you increase, as you run this wall along this direction to the north, you can see your contour lines continue to go up. So we're going from 18 feet to 16 feet. And then as you go up, it's 15, 14, all the way up to 0.
Do you have anything in the site plans that show this in profile? Because this is a top-down look. I think if the commissioner saw it in profile, that might help explain it.
I understand that
I was going to say some 3D rendering would be very helpful. I mean, we have this, just to your point, Mr. Chairman, was going to be my next question. Some 3D renderings here, Mr. Vaca, would be very calm some concerns. That's just my comment there.
Excuse me.
Just to be clear, none of this wall is going to be above the grade of the parking lot. So
No,
that's, I think maybe he's envisioning some of this wall is above the parking lot.
no, the
This
wall,
is
the
all
wall,
below grade.
Well,
Right.
you didn't say that.
Well, I'm assuming that.
but yeah, the wall height is only approximately, at the top part of the wall height is only approximately 6 inches taller than the adjacent area.
Topography, the height of
Exactly.
the wall.
Right. That's correct. If I recall, I have that section, but it's,
Roughly equal to the top of the curb,
what's that? Yeah,
roughly equal to the top of the
right,
curb.
exactly.
So I just want to,
There's no, it's not necessary to be any higher.
all right, so I just want to go back to Commissioner Siddell and ask, Commissioner, is your concern that the wall is 18 feet above?
Right, I'm
The
having a
parking
hard time
lot?
envisioning all of this. This is more like a grading issue. Can you fix it? You might have a funny looking wall at the top, but where I'm getting at, is how heavy is this thing going to be? You said you haven't designed this yet, but I look at 18 feet, and that's pretty freaking tall, 18 feet, And what's this thing? Is this going to be made of some sort of composite material? Is this going to be a stone? I mean, what's going to be the weight per yard when you're done? You haven't designed this yet, but this is the size of the encroachment on the upland review area is so significant. So that's sort of not seeing the whole thing. I think a rendering would be appropriate here, just to explain that point. Why so high? But I think I understand what he's saying is that the slope of the parking lot is such that you have to make up for it for the height of the wall. Is that basically in a nutshell what's happening here?
Exactly. So
Right.
if I can quickly, if you can bear with me here. So if you were to look at the wall from the Laser Quest parking lot over here, with the direction of my arrow, I'm just going to draw on the screen arbitrarily. But so essentially, if this is the top of your wall height right here, so here's the end of your wall, that would correlate with here. This is the corner of the wall, which would be over here. And then this point would be approximately that angle point. Essentially what's happening is your existing ground surface is essentially doing something along this lines. This comes down. There's your tallest 18 feet. This kind of goes up
I got it.
back to 16. And then from here over, it continues to go back up. So when you're standing on the pavement, this just looks like a parking lot. And there looks like there's a random curb that kind of runs along the edge and it drops off. But this is what you're viewing. And then the wall itself, and again, we haven't settled on the design of the wall right now. Essentially, the wall I'm looking at right now is a Versalock wall, which is essentially just the small 1 foot by approximately 8-inch tall stones. They all stack, interlock together, similar to cinder blocks, but they're an architectural looking wall. And then as far as the design, and again, I can't speak to the actual design, but in order for them to tie everything in place, let me go back to my wall design quickly, hold on. Again, because this is a generic detail, depending on what size, and to provide clarification, yes, Commissioner Zellick, there will be a geotech report required at some point in order for the wall engineer to provide adequate design of whatever the background material is behind the wall. And essentially, what is not shown that is a potential option is they do tieback. So basically, it's essentially a type of fabric that gets installed underneath all of the soil. So underneath the cars that are parked above it. And it basically provides a friction mat to basically lock everything into place. So it's not gonna fall over, unlike BC Richards or whatever the issue was that had been concerned. So, but the reason why I don't design them and I leave it up to them, the wall manufacturer design them, is they do this every day, and you would hope that they're going to provide you the correct design given all of the specific parameters, in this case being trees and 5-foot separation and 18-foot tall, plus the overburden of parking, plus the fact that we have a guardrail, all of those things. They take all of those into consideration in their design. They've seen them all before and they say, all right, this is what works and this is the design we have to follow.
So with all that said, I think the commission would prefer that we have a complete application that has all the information it needs and addresses all the concerns raised prior to us going to a vote on the application. So one of those concerns was the geotech borings. So would that be something that could be completed before we wrap up this application? Because I don't want to have some open item, existing and have a commission vote on something that was brought to their attention and was neglected.
I would think it's unlikely that they'd get their geotech report prior to our next monthly meeting.
And if I may, I don't want to speak above myself here, but it's what the information that the geotech report would provide would provide information to the wall engineer, but would not necessarily provide any information to the wetland commission. That would
Just plain devil's advocate. I mean, what if the geotech comes back and says, this is no go, you can't build this. And then you can come back to us again for a revision,
Or you need a 20-foot deep foundation or something.
Yes.
Well, the benefit is, and a lot of the technology that they have now for a lot of these wall systems is they are eliminating a lot of you can't do this anymore. That's the thing. So it's, if we can't do a small modular block system, we have gravity block, which is large, they weigh 2 tons that basically lock themselves into place and they hold themselves up. They have the grass wall type of system that I mentioned. I've been in this career for 17 years now, and over the last 5 years, the amount of additional technologies for wall stabilization, erosion controls, all of these things they're exponentially larger than they ever had been. Like the design prior to was, it's a modular block. That's what everybody does. That's what every wall system anywhere. Clinton Crossings did it. That's what everybody did. Now there are so many different options that handle so many different design parameters. It's all right. We have poor material behind the wall. Let's use this type of wall system. There's this type of material, contaminated, whatever it might be, behind the wall. Let's use this type of system. So it's not going to be a matter of, well, the borings came back this way, therefore we can do what it's okay. The borings came back this way. All right, this wall is not going to work. Let's use this wall type of situation.
Commissioner Wilmette.
But doesn't it exponentially get more expensive when you get into stuff like that?
It does get more expensive and
you're doing all this to get what looks to me to be about 42 parking spaces. It could be that each one of those parking spaces gets to be like $50,000 a shot.
I understand exactly where you're coming from. Yes.
Let's say you say, I don't want to do this wall at all. Is the rest of this land level enough to do it without the wall?
If you were to eliminate the wall entirely, the slope along this area is too steep. Right now, it's probably in the neighborhood of 7 to 10% in these areas, which is too steep for a parking area. You would have to do some additional grading.
But it is currently being used as additional parking.
It is currently being used, but there is not adequate enough to provide for both the patrons and the employees, which is why they're renting additional space.
Okay, and curious, what's the number of parking spaces now?
Currently, there are 109 spaces that are legitimate.
In this site, not the total.
In the site, there are 109.
Just the site that we're talking about improving.
And you want to throw in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just the site that the section that we're talking about improving and paving.
We are.
How many are parking there now and how many are proposed?
Okay, if I understand your question, how many are parking there now, or how many are in the lot that was created just to create a lot?
Right. That's what we're talking about.
The non-official lot.
Right, that unofficial lot is what we're talking about.
I don't have an exact count, and the unfortunate part is the issue you run into is because they're not official, they kind of park where they can.
Right.
So I personally have not had a count of
like
that,
100?
but no, it's less than that. It would probably, I would imagine, no more than 50.
So for your planning on this project, did you guys ever go out and do an actual car count at, like, say, Saturday 6 o'clock, which would probably be like the busiest.
The,
To
well,
see what the average traffic, and I understand you have a lot of people coming with just, them, one car, going to the bar, hanging out, relaxing.
so this was from our original presentation, and I actually I visited the property. I don't remember the date, but it was on a Saturday night, and every single aisle, the entire middle portion of the main fire aisle, all the areas identified here in red and in green, all of these areas were parked with vehicles. And then this was prior to them building the additional lot. There were basically vehicles that were just kind of scattered around in the grass over here when I visited. Since they've built the lot, this has become completely full. And so what happens is this part of the lot fills up first because they're not going to park in the aisles. But once this is full, then they're like, well, I'm not going to go anywhere else. So then they start filling up all of the fire aisles again. And then the third time I visited the restaurant, I ended up parking in the Price Chopper because there was no physical space for my vehicle to fit on the property anywhere. Now we're in the middle of the summer season. People are on vacation. There are not as many concerns. We have not had as many of the parking issues. I mentioned this at the planning and zoning meeting. Actually, one of a very interesting thing to see was Mother's Day. They had the highest attendance in the restaurant that they had to date, and they did not have a parking issue because everybody came as a family. So all of the vehicles arrived together with a full family. They had the most number of people in the restaurant, but they did not have a parking issue that day. So
It sounds like a bunch of small, young nuclear families.
so unfortunately on the Friday, the Saturdays
Family
and
goes out for something. 10 cars, so-
well, yeah, exactly.
We're older.
So, right. So that's the situation they're running into is on the Fridays and the Saturday nights, because this is as popular, this is pulling people, I've spoken to a number of individuals who have, they've come from as far as in other areas because of this restaurant. So they're bringing the popularity in, but they're coming by themselves. So again, I am more than willing to have discussions about the potential to eliminate spaces, but it's not a matter of one or two. Again, it's a matter of 28, and the cost prohibitiveness of the 28 is what the concern is. In other words, if we are going to propose the development for 28 less, does it make sense from a cost standpoint? And that's the reason why we are proposing what we are proposing. And I recognize I had a conversation with the developer about the OSTA process. He's like, no, I understand how long that takes. I know it takes a while, but this is what we need.
Yeah, and so when I look at this, again, I'm just gonna make the comment, the existing edge of slope, if that was the parking lot, I have no problem with it, but I think because you go beyond that and build this retaining wall, that's when we get into all these issues that have been raised. Commissioner Bouchard?
I was just gonna point out that where you show the wall now, I know it's not written in stone because you haven't decided on the design, but that's the bottom of the wall. So it seems like it would only accommodate a modular block system because you're not showing any step back at all. If you use one of those step back systems or grass walls or whatever you're talking about, you're gonna lose those spaces, I would imagine anyway. Is that accurate?
Well, there are various designs,
You're showing a very narrow profile of that wall,
right,
front to back.
Yes.
But there's no room for any step back.
Yeah, the rake on the wall will, depending on the height, obviously will push things back a certain amount, but that will be accounted for and as part of the design. And there are different wall systems. Again, the one wall manufacturer that I spoke with had like 6 different designs to choose from to say, well, if you do this does this, but this, you know what I mean? So it's like, which one works and which one's most cost effective and solves the problem and deals with the trees and, so it's
The way
which
it's
one.
pictured though, it's pretty much vertical. We're
Yes, the
looking straight
picture,
down.
what I'm showing is I'm
And
showing
rake at
the
all, you're
top.
pushing the bottom out or you're pushing the top in?
You would push the top in, but it's the rake is only, I think at most 5 degrees or something like that. So it's to show that on the plan is, especially because it
That would be with your
changes. So
traditional modular.
that would be with your traditional modular block.
But any
Exactly.
of those
Right.
other newer ones that sound great, but they sound very stable, but they would have to be stepped back, I would think.
It depends.
Considerably more.
Well, again, it's if you step it back a number of times, that there's an engineering process to do that, but you can do essentially this, you can cut it in half if you have the correct amount of geotextile, or I'm sorry, biaxial geogrid, which is the fabric that they basically put in the slope. And so it's like, all right, if we're gonna rake it at 5 degrees, we can use a 20-foot geogrid. If we rake it at 3 degrees, if you do a 30-foot geogrid, you get the same resulting structural support, essentially.
Commissioner Siddell, do you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do. I'm still waiting. Patiently.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Siddell.
Can you go back to the picture of that, your those big socks? You
Yes.
had it, like, when you- So, question I have on your plan, those are going to be put right at the edge of the wetland, right? Those big socks.
Nope,
But
those
you-
those are placed on the edge of the property. Well,
Edge
they're
of the-
placed, they're placed on the edge of the property line. And then in this case, they're placed about 5 feet separated from the edge of the wall. So it's gonna, now I say, there's only 5 feet from the wall to the property line. So it's gonna be inside that realm of where the wall construction would take place.
My good question is, why don't you put it a layer higher? Is water going to pool? Heaven forbid, there's a storm. Is water going to pool in that area? Why don't we put some more erosion control higher up on the slope while you're building that wall to cut down on the velocity of the water, maybe come down slope? Again, I'm speaking to the steepness of the slope. Maybe is it going to be too late or not enough when you're right at the edge, the water's coming down. You follow? You're gonna have a waterfall
Yep.
there and your water's gonna pool there. Is that what we want?
A lot of the times when we kind of determine what the phasing plan would be of like the wall construction, that's where you would get into and there's a number of additional measures where you can use diversion swales, you can use sediment traps and so on. So basically, as a quick example, if they are going to start to install, let's say they're going to install this section of wall, they would excavate back portions of this area, but we know that, all right, so if it rains, the slope is going to kind of push rain in this direction. So in this case, as they're starting to begin this construction, they can install a temporary diversion swale that basically catches the water and directs it away from the excavation. They would put in a small plunge pool, which is essentially just a stone pond that basically slows all the water down. In this case, well, I probably drew this incorrectly, but they would basically direct it over here, put the plunge pool, and it slowly releases, following the requirements of the 2024 guidelines, which stipulates how you would allow for a release like that in the direction of a wetland. Or in this case, we can direct it we can direct around to a different location with another type of, so in other words, as they're going through this, and what I'd like to clarify is that, well, no one's ever going to actually do this. The contractors will do this because they don't want to work in the rain or in the mud or any of that stuff either. So it behooves them to install these measures in accordance with this plan because it prevents them from having the 25-year storm that washes out their construction. So it's not like you guys should really do this. If you do this, it's going to save your time and money from the very beginning. So as the wall gets built, all right, here's the first section, wall gets built, great. And we move on to the next, and then we, control that individual section. So as they're going about doing the work, they are maintaining control of the site throughout the entire time. And nowadays they have to do those type of things because they cannot just, it's going to be a rainstorm and well, all bets are off. Like they can't do that type of stuff anymore because it may have happened 40, 50 years ago, and it did happen. But
the magnitude of the storms that are happening nowadays, any contractor that is going to build a development of this magnitude cannot afford to not follow the requirements from like an erosion and sedimentation control standpoint, because it will only come back to burn them if they don't.
Okay, next question. We talked about permeable pavement. Can you tell us more about installing permeable pavement? How far, where in the plan is that going to be? And can you give me an explanation of what that's all about?
We have not proposed any permeable pavement at this time. Our thoughts, given the fact that we were proposing the focal point design associated with that, and the stormwater, the low impact development design, we believed satisfied the low impact development requirement, which, for the record, is not. I don't believe the town actually has a low impact development other than the MS4.
We used to,
Okay.
it was repealed. There's discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission to
Reinstated.
reinstate some form of it.
Okay.
They want to get past the part that made it objectionable, which I wasn't here for, so I'm not that clear on.
Sure.
But things like your drainage design would be ideal. My suggestion about the impermeable has more to do with my impervious coverage reports to the DEP every year.
Right.
So
Understood.
it's a selfish interest on my part,
Understood.
but it's also part of the general permit for the MS4. So I might be looking at it from my perspective, but they look at it from their perspective. We haven't been keeping strong numbers on how much we've reduced in a given year and how many of our developments have increased it, but it is still part of the calculus for the MS4, which is about to be reissued again next year, I believe.
So for the benefit of the commission, where might those permeable type of surfaces be placed?
My thoughts, because it would have been easiest for Frank to incorporate, would be the areas around bioswales. Only because when you have these kinds of pavements, you often have a high level overflow. And so that overflow could be directed into the bioswale without having to have additional plumbing or something like that that would direct it towards the storm drain system.
And how many bioswales do we have here? Is it 6? 2.
So to respond to that comment, and one of the benefits that these systems, and there's case studies that show this, I'm not just saying this, because all of the previous designs, including pervious pavements, involve a rather stringent maintenance requirement. I have designed a few pervious asphalt pavement areas. I did it for UConn. I've designed I observed a design at UConn, one of the first in the state of a concrete pervious pavement. The situation that arises with the pervious pavement, not like a grass pave situation, which I can speak about momentarily. The asphalt pervious pavement situation is, because we're in New England, everything gets salted. And then there's a number of towns that still, I don't know if this is required or not, and I might be out of date with this, but there are still some towns that don't use the salt. They still have like a mixture of sediment and so on. And then there are also situations where just because during, plowing and all of that stuff, there's a substantial increase in sediments that are generated just through the wear of the roadways and so on. Well, all of that sediment gets into all of the pervious pavement. The correct way of going about cleaning the pervious pavement, and this is, you can actually purchase one of these, it's essentially a giant vacuum truck that basically sucks all the sediment out. And there's like a maintenance schedule for that. Well, the vacuum truck was, I believe it was in the $300,000 range or something like that. Anyway, the main benefit of the focal points that I found, which unlike a lot of the other systems I've seen, they are essentially maintenance free. Now I know that that's like, well, nothing's maintenance free. You have to clean out the pretreatment structures. They get sediment. A landscaper can clean it out. You have to clean out the focal point and bioretention areas. A landscaper can remove the mulch, put it back. They have case studies that prove that the media that underneath that mulch does not need to be replaced. It's essentially self-healing. All of the things that they have done have made it because they know that no one actually does the maintenance. Like you're supposed to clean a catch basin, and I have this written in the stormwater quality manual from the state of Connecticut. You clean a catch basin once every 6 months or so. Usually you clean them once every 10 years. What's the maintenance schedule for the town to clean their sumps?
I think we're 5.
5? So the situation with pervious pavement and so on is the maintenance associated with them doesn't ever take place, and therefore they fail. Now, back to like grass paves and so on and so forth, they have very good potential uses. For example, at I'm sorry, at the mall in West Hartford, they have an entire section of pavement area that has the grass pave. It's ideal for their like auxiliary parking area where it's Christmas shopping and I'm gonna park over there because I never have to park over there. The amount of use that the pervious pavements for this area, if you're gonna use like a grass pave or something like that, you would never be able to maintain it to the point that it would survive. So essentially you will have a pervious pavement, but the grass will not grow because of the amount of vehicle tracking on it. If you're going to use, there are a few other products that provides like a pervious paver or something like that. It's just, if they're not maintained the way they need to be maintained, they don't function the way that they should function. So they essentially are impervious pavement. So instead, systems like this stormwater management, where they have refocused the design to, well, we know nobody actually does any of this stuff, so let's make it so you don't have to maintain it to a certain degree, like the least possible. They're starting to aim more in those directions than they are in, well, this is all great, but you have to do all this maintenance of it. And this is not a problem because you have maintenance crews and stuff. It doesn't happen. So that's a lot of the focus of the industry is going to the, all right, how do we make this? So, because this is a company, they want people to buy it. The way that they're going to get them to buy it is so that it's got the least amount of maintenance. It's the cheapest. It's the easiest to install. It's not concrete. They don't need an excavator. They can install it by hand. All of those things, that's the way this industry is going because they know this is the direction. All of the other stuff never actually worked.
Commissioner Siddell, is your hand still up?
Yeah, just one more question, reference. What is MS4? Is that a specification? I've never heard that before. What exactly is, when you coin that phrase, what exactly is that?
It stands for Municipal Small Storm Sewer System. So MS4 because there's 4 S's.
Okay. Thank you.
It is the bane of my existence.
And for the record, I totally understand where Chris is coming from this is what the MS4 is asking for. I'm proposing something that doesn't satisfy the MS4. I wouldn't surprise me if in the very near future, products similar to these are considered as part of an MS4 requirement to say, well, you can do something like this. This is new technology. It's only about 5 to 10 years old, but they have the case studies of 5 to 10 years old to back up the fact that, they're using these in Maine. I know I've gotten questions about products like this. Well, what happens when they freeze? Well, they have them implemented in Maine and that all of the developments that they've implemented them in are functioning fantastically. They love them up there. So I usually, this is an alternative that doesn't satisfy the MS4, but is providing LID beyond what the town currently asks for, and also benefits the developer in the fact that there's much reduced maintenance. You're not dealing with all the pipes. You're not purchasing the pipes. You're not buying all the catch basins and all of those things.
Thank you.
Okay. To my right, any questions, concerns, comments?
No question.
Okay. We're to the left. Anybody? No. All right. Commissioner Siddell, one last chance before we table this.
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Chris, any comments before we table? All right.
Mr. Chairman, I just
Nope.
would
Commissioner
reiterate
Bashan.
one question I asked, one of the earlier questions I asked, that primary separator. you said if that does get filled with floating debris, to say it wasn't maintained, it would outflow into the open swale anyway. It wouldn't,
That is correct.
it wouldn't go into your underground
Nope.
vessel.
Nope.
So you'd see it eventually, people would see it.
That's correct. People would see it. And I mean, I understand how Dorian runs his restaurant. I would imagine he's not going to allow a bunch of refuse to sit in any of his.
Just wanted to make sure.
But yeah. So and then to clarify, as far as the high flow, there is just a standard beehive grate on the high flow. So that would again, it prevents any of the floatables or anything from getting into the detention system.
That's it.
Okay, then I guess we'll
If I
table this.
If I may,
Go ahead.
table for, because you need what information? I just want to clarify and know what I need to provide.
Okay, so we're looking for the environmental impact study.
Looking for your soil scientist or biologist to evaluate the URA, the feasibility of reducing the footprint somewhat.
Mhm.
And I can see in your presentation where we don't have to spend a lot of time on the permeable versus impermeable pavement. But if you can think of something in the next few weeks, it might work for that.
Okay.
And again, that's just for the MS4 reporting, so
I
that's
And
where I'm at with that.
note that we don't have a inland.
Thanks, Matt.
We don't have a soil scientist report attached to the application either.
That
No,
was-
there was not.
That
Did-
was submitted in the first application. I
Oh, it
believe.
was.
Yeah, the first, not response. It was submitted the first time.
Okay, so it would be in the previous packet.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I may,
It was by
in
all
the previous
all points.
packet.
yep. Yeah, there's Dean's son, I believe.
I don't recall who it was, yes.
Okay.
I know it was all points.
I did see something to that effect. I'm not sure if it covers everything we're
Let's
asking for.
verify that.
We'll verify
And if
that.
it hasn't been included in the first packet, let's get it out to the
Yeah.
commissioners.
Then there's the issue of locating trees of 6-inch diameter or
Right.
more.
I understand.
And I think that was the
You
highlights.
need that to be surveyed.
What are you proposing? You gonna run out there with a measuring stick?
I want to understand how you need us to identify trees that are larger than.
Well, since Paul's still here, Paul, from the planning and zoning aspect of it, when we identify the 6-inch trees and larger, is that surveyed or is that shown with any particular accuracy? I mean, does it have to be T2?
It does not determine that.
Okay,
That way, it just says show trees, so I would say as accurate as possible, if you have reference points, should be based off the survey.
not a great answer, but
I can work with that.
okay. All right, so that's what I recall from the discussion.
All right. Can I get a motion to table?
I'd like to make a motion to table this until the next regular meeting, which is what, September 19th?
Moved by Commissioner Wilmette, second.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Conway. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Why?
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, well, thank you. We'll table this until the September meeting.
Thank you for your patience and time.
All right, moving along, item number 8 on the agenda, public participation on non-agenda items. Anybody in the room wishing to speak? We're not seeing anybody online that was joined, Chris?
Give me a moment, get caught up with the PowerPoint. Okay.
There are no attendees online.
So no one online?
Thank you.
Okay, all right, well.
We did have an
move on.
attendee earlier. He's bailed out. The remaining are panelists.
Well, move on to communications and reports. Agent communications, Conservation Commission Regulation Amendments, 2025. So, you put together something for us, Chris?
I took a stab at, let's see, I'm almost caught up here. Come on, come on.
So, well, that's,
All right,
While you're
so I
looking
took a
for
stab
that-
at least the signage. I haven't heard a lot of commentary from the commission about what else they might like to
we're
adjust.
still waiting for a copy of the model regulations to be sent to us.
So when you say model regulations, are you asking me to rewrite the regulations for your approval?
No. State of Connecticut sends us, or all the commissions, their suggested model regulations. The way we've done this in the past is there's someone with the skills looks at our current regulations and highlights what the differences are with the new model regulations.
Okay,
And the subcommittee that we formed previously reviews those.
do we know if this
Any-
is a DEP thing or a Yukon thing, or guide me a little bit about where I'd look for such a
I
thing?
would say it's from DEP.
Okay,
And then a staff member will highlight what the differences are. And the subcommittee will review the proposed regulations, make sure that there's nothing missing that might be particular to Newington that we've added in the past. I know we have vegetative buffers, section 6, that's not all towns have that, but we do. Something like the public hearing special permit, you know, that might get flagged if you look at the two of them compared to, you know, the differences. So we need that to happen.
okay. We're coming into my quieter season as the construction season starts to, well, I was gonna say slow down a little bit, but with the Garfield project about to start, it won't slow down until October.
I think the signage is at least a good start.
Yep. Well, that was an easy one. I told you I was gonna steal it from TPZ, so.
Yeah, but I think you changed the wording a little bit, but about 2/3 of the way down, it says, subject to the permit. Did you mean like subject to the permit application or the application hearing? In TPZ, it says subject to the public hearing, but ours aren't automatically public hearings.
So no, this is a question I had, actually, now you brought it up, is did we want this for all applications or only for public hearings?
Okay.
Just
So-
for public hearings, right?
Thought it was just for public.
Yeah,
TPZ is just for public hearings,
Yeah,
Signage.
public can't
the
comment.
signage, yes.
Right, public can't comment anyway during a normal public meeting. They can only comment during a public hearing.
Mhm.
And it would be just up to the
Just for
commission.
public hearings. So
Right, so the
first we'd
commission
have an initial meeting, we'd say, does it deserve a public hearing? And
Right,
if it did, then they would put the sign up.
correct.
Okay,
Okay, but so how is the wording? Is that still, it says subject to the permit? So I don't know if that's the wording you wanted to use, or maybe I'm reading something into it.
well, in that regard, it goes closer to the one from the zoning regs because theirs is also just for public hearings.
Subject to the public hearing.
Yeah.
So if we decided to have a public hearing, then they'd be subject to the sign requirement.
The sign requirement, yeah.
So maybe that one, couple of words could be corrected there, I guess.
If we do everything on a monthly basis, why is it only 10 days?
Very likely because TPZ meets twice a month,
Oh, I get it. Okay.
you know. And again, this was, from my perspective, this was one of these, let's get this ball rolling, and I threw this at you. It wasn't intended to be acted on tonight.
No, that's,
So,
But at least the public would have 10 days before the hearing.
right, and that's for TPZ. Now that we understand that, and we meet once a month, it could be
14 days.
15
20
days.
15 days, a half a month.
Right,
okay. That sounds, that's better than 10. That's all. I can say.
15?
Yeah, 15 is better than 10.
Well, we'll open up for discussion.
I did
What do
math. to do
Commissioners
that.
think, you know, it's a fair number for the public. If we meet once a month. How much notice do they need?
I'd give them the whole 30 days. I don't understand why we're even limiting it.
We could require them to post it within, say, 10 days after the meeting where it was determined a public hearing was required. That
Okay,
would
so
give
that could
roughly
be-
20 or so days for advance notice.
Well, they also, after we determine that a public hearing is needed, they also need time to post that, right? There needs to be a legal notice posted.
We do that in the newspaper, yeah.
The town does that.
That town does that. We don't legal notice budding property owners except for, I believe, the immediate adjacent property owners for Conservation Commission. TPZ is a little different for that. They notify, hey, Paul, again, since you're still here, a butter notification for TPZ. How far out do you go?
So since I won't just broadcast across, that way it can actually be picked up on the system. So for the TPZ, I said the 10 days notice, we'll go back kind of the signs. I think is the key thing is so the public hearing notice in the paper, there's specific requirements, not less than 2 days, not more than 10. The first, I believe it's not more than 15. When we send a notice to the paper, we typically have to send it. So say there was a meeting on a Tuesday for the Conservation Commission. It would have to run the 2 Thursdays prior to that. And we'd have to have it no later by that Monday. So you're talking about, basically like 2.5, 3 weeks minimum. We have to get the notice to the paper, typically that Friday. So you're almost 3 weeks before that you have to get it to the paper. So that's why it kind of works with the Conservation Commission, meet once a month. You tell the agent, yes, we have to hold a hearing. We get it to the paper. The 10 days is typically something that's kind of standard out there for signs. It's kind of like what we do for noticing of abutters. That's kind of that 10-day requirement. It is kind of picked up. Most people use it. I would suggest not going too far or having language that bases it based upon the determination. Because, is it going to be 10 days, 15 days? That variation could create some confusion with an applicant or with an appellate who comes in and says, oh, the sign wasn't posted, and trying to figure that out. So having a fixed day from the hearing, I think, is a good way to do it. That way it stays uniform. And again, it is up to the commission on how they would choose to actually do that. But again, the newspaper notice is required to run the 2 weeks prior to the actual meeting. So that's the amount of time it goes in the paper. It goes twice.
Newspaper notification requirement, correct, for public hearings. Okay.
Yep, and that's how it's done currently
But
now.
he asked you about the abutter.
Yeah, and the abutter is immediately adjacent to it.
Immediate?
Yep. Immediate and across the street. Across the street is considered an immediate abutter.
And we do typically, if we do send a letter out and there's one of these, well, that next property owner is really, really close, for the interest of being conservative and not getting challenged later, we'll send an extra letter or two instead of taking the chance that we might have to deal with an appeal. So if it's questionable at all, an additional property owner gets notified.
When it's close to a town line, to even go further out. Right?
There's a whole nother requirement for notifying a town clerk in the neighboring town if it's within 500 feet of a boundary line.
Yep, and I believe that's within 7 days of receipt of the application. So when the application is received, those.
That's a state thing.
It's all state. Yeah, but it's all in the general statutes. The notification requirements are all, subject to the general statutes.
Okay.
But it's also a consideration too. It's something to throw in there. So some towns require the applicant to provide the abutters notice. Here, the TPZ and the town pretty much does send out those notices. You get the odd circumstances when they're condos. The TPZ's requirement is interesting on that one. You actually have to research. Research the officers, find all that process. It's above and beyond what the statutes normally require. It shouldn't require you to
trust the applicant themselves to do it either, though.
Yeah, and again, that's just a consideration for the commission, because there are municipalities who make the applicant do it. Again, that's done by certificate of mailing. So it's not done by certified mail, but what happens is someone from the office needs to take it down to the post office. They fill out that form, stamp that it was sent out, and that ends up costing. It's not too dramatic. It's an extra like $15 to $20 compared to certified mail, which would cost you, somewhat of like $100 on a lot of applications.
And as far as that condominium notification, I would be more in favor of whoever the primary contact is for the taxes, in other words, the assessor's list, as opposed to trying to find out who the current president is. I remember Paul had a substantial difficulty with one of the applications last year, trying to figure out who the officers were.
Yeah, because you pretty much have to attend their meetings and read their minutes to figure that out.
Yeah,
I mean,
you-
even
It's not
somebody.
public information.
Yeah, most of it is, but you have to do that search on the online business search. You have to find their LLC. It doesn't always match what's on the tax record. So that's a little complication that's in our process. That just requires that now we're used to it now. But that's something that does, a hitch in the process of having to say, if they don't perfectly line up, you're kind of trying to find what their LLC is.
But my biggest concern from that perspective is, let's say, for instance, we do track down somebody who's the quote current president, vice president, treasurer, secretary, whatnot. Send out the notification, come to find out, president's not actually the president, just said they were. Now we've sent out a invalid notice. So rather than getting involved in finding ourselves in a legal dispute over who we notified, in the case of something like that, my recommendation is, again, whoever's in the actual assessor's record as the point of contact, whether it's a property management company or whatever, just because the more stringent we make our regulations on ourselves, the more likely we are to be appealed.
I just throw one point out. Is it overzealous to have a notification requirement for any wetland application? Because this way the public may come and then petition. Well, you said that they can't discuss it though, but.
Yep. So there is.
Couldn't petition for a public hearing. Then there's no way for the public to petition for a public
I
hearing.
There is a
actually think
petition
There's a
requirement.
long legal remedy for that, but.
Yeah, I
that
do
gets
believe
really
there's,
complicated, doesn't it?
I believe there is a petition avenue. Don't quote me on the details of it. I don't know it that
So
well.
I believe that's within 14 days, if I remember correctly, 14 or 15.
Number of signatures.
And then that's actually, yes, it's by the numbers of signatures. So that's actually one of the reasons why the Conservation Commission can't, perform an action on a plan when it comes in, because there is a kind of that waiting period for the petition. That's why you typically have one, you deem it, and then act on it. Again, the wording of that requirement is without a public hearing. So a commission cannot act on an application without a public hearing. In my previous municipality where I was the wetlands agent, there were some cases where we did ones for town projects where we just, I talked to the chairman and we just went right to public hearing and just didn't notice to start because it was something that needed to happen and you could not wait that extra month.
All right, so we're comfortable with the 10 days? It's a 10-day minimum. I mean,
That's for the sign, but he's saying that the notice is gonna be out weeks before that. So yeah, I'm okay with 10 days.
any commissioners' comments?
Thank you, Paul.
All right.
One last item from me under Agent Com. I might. Yeah, okay. Agent approval for a bench at the park across the street. It was a zero net change in the ground surface. The memorial benches that we have, one of them was going in the upland review area. I did an agent approval on that. And that's all I've been fairly quiet this month as far as that's concerned.
Good. We'll move on. Town Council Liaison Communications.
Wake up. Welcome back, Gail.
We will be brief because we took a bit of a respite and we canceled our first meeting in August. Next Tuesday will be our meeting since July 22nd. So the only thing really that, unless Gail has something else to report, 272 West Hill Road, which I think is the Waples house. A grant was submitted, but was not funded. We were kind of sad to hear that. However, the town manager did say that there's continued discussion with the owner of that property. So, this is an individual who, after initial discussions, he understands the importance of this property historically for the town of Newington and is willing to continue these conversations and, work with the town as much as possible to see what can be done to be able to preserve that 272 West Hill Road. And I know you've been involved probably even more than I have with historical preservation. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to say.
No, that's,
So the grant was to purchase it, for the town to purchase it?
I'm trying to remember what it was for. I think it was to look
Paul
into.
seems to know.
Do you remember what it was?
So I can add it in, let's see if I should be able to be picked up by the mics by how loud I am.
Just come stand over here. I'll give you mine.
So the grant application was through the Capital Region Council of Governments. And what they were doing is they were working to analyze these sites for potential like middle housing options or some other options to kind of convert. It wasn't just about historic properties. They were looking for multiple properties. CROG got a grant to do this and to look at options, how these sites could be transformed, what's out there. And I saw this as a unique opportunity to say, okay, we have this residential property. What would be needed to do the carrying costs for the preservation? Because the issue with the historic property is preserving it as is just requires straight funding. Someone has to come up with the money, and it does not make sense for the owner. It does not pencil out for the owner to just fix it and sell it as is. It would be sold at a loss, and no property owner wants to sell their property at a loss. So this was going to look at potential options for what could be done with that property to preserve the historic elements of it. My view of it was what could be done to preserve the streetscape elements of it, that kind of feeling of West Hill Road, but could something be done in the back of the property, around the house? Could something be converted? And this was, they're working with Goldman and York on projects. Unfortunately, only 3 projects were selected. I do want to continue the conversations with them to see if more can be selected, but that's kind of one of the ways that I saw this site potentially being preserved is through some type of transformation that kept the historical elements in place, the feeling of the streetscape in place, but did something that made the project pencil out at the end of the day. Because the problem is without either a direct funding, something has to pencil out as a project. Otherwise, the house does ultimately end up getting demolished and something new gets built in its place. So that's kind of where we were going with that. Unfortunately, it didn't get selected. The owner has been great to work with, but at some point he will have to make a decision on the site.
I was gonna say, he's being generous because this is all voluntary on his
Yep.
part.
Yes, he has, he did have a demolition permit, and that's when it became kind of a community issue at that point. And then he did stop his demolition permit and said, okay, what can we do to move forward? We worked with Preservation CT to get an analysis of the house. It is extensive repairs that need to be done. And that's why it doesn't necessarily pencil out to stay as a single family house unless there, again, is an altruistic person anyone knows out there who wants to save this thing, please
I've
come
worked on it,
forward.
and my buddy's worked on it too, and he said, you can't put another nail or screw in that house, but I think he's exaggerating, but.
Well, we kind of, some of us laughed because a lot of the vegetation has been cut down. But,
vegetation was holding
it
it
looked
up.
to me that was what was holding up the house. But, to try to turn this into a win-win situation, because it is situated within the historic district. There was concern, there is interest in it as an historic property, but also making it a win for the owner as well. So, what can we do? So I'm happy to know that discussion is ongoing, that the owner hasn't completely pulled back and said, that's it, that's enough, we've tried. He understands the importance of it as well, and the importance to the town and the residents that have come forward. And other than that, we'll see you next month.
Thank you. On to next time, Pond Life Research and Education. Alan, if you're still online, this is, I believe, yours.
Yes, I am. Looking back at the minutes, I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, but on page 42, Chris Thibodeau spoke to the film on Mill Pond that I had discussed earlier, and we had conversations regarding that. Chris, maybe you could fill in the blanks for me. You spoke to someone that has some biology background who's came up with a resultant factor that it's a biofilm as a result of the accumulation in the bottom of the pond. How did they come up with, how did they arrive at that? Or how did they give you this information from?
So to clarify, we spoke to somebody who spoke to somebody. I talked with our parks supervisor, Clay Pedigo, who
Sure.
had spoken to, I want to say, and again, this is, don't quote me because I'm not certain, to our water treatment expert, the people who treat the pond for the algae growth and the other treatments the pond gets. I understand it's a twice a year application of chemicals to control the algae. Paul and I happened to be out there this afternoon, went for a walk to get out of the office for a few minutes. And it is August and we are looking at a little bit of an algae bloom on the south end of the pond. But it was this conversation Clay had with them that informed me of what this is as a biofilm. I'm no biologist, I'm no expert on this, but the thought process was that it is the natural decomposition of the detritus that's on the bottom of the pond that is in its process of breaking down, gives off gases, and that gas shows on the surface as a what some people would think of as an oil slick. It's shiny, it looks a little discolored, it reflects light differently. And that's why it's often mistaken for an oil slick. But it's the breakdown of leaves and other things, other litter on the bottom of the pond. So at that point, the conversation turned to, well, when did we dredge last? And I don't have an answer for that yet. I can also tell you that budgetary wise, we do have a CIP item for dredging, but it's not a project I'm ready to undertake in the next immediate future. In other words, a year or so down the road, we can look at that. I'm currently focused on getting all of the back order work off of our books, outstanding grants and things like that that are holding us up from getting other grants because we haven't completed this work. So I don't
Back
have
to
the
dredging.
time for that just yet.
Okay, as far as a dredging project, you and I had an earlier conversation when I first met you. I stopped in your office on an impromptu visit and asked you to come out and look at the pond with me, just get an overall look at the shoreline and such. And you did, you accommodated me. And you brought out the gentleman from the Parks Department as well to discuss his, intents on things as he's fairly new. Nonetheless, I had brought up dredging at that point in conversation. And now I see we're still on that. Is this project, as far as the budget, and does this approval have to go through town council?
Oh, yes, my budget requests to council are an annual exercise.
Okay. When would you be proposing to put this in towards town council so they can move forward at some point?
Well, what we do is we often budget many of these little accounts on an annual basis so that when we have enough money in that account, we can afford to actually do a larger project. That's sort of the, I'm going to call it the thought process behind how we're doing the Garfield catch-up work. I've mentioned before, I've got what was originally 6 different projects that were combined into one big project, and they're being paid for out of multiple accounts. I don't recommend this. It's quite frankly a pain in my ass to try and manage a $1.5 million project out of 8 accounts and 2 grants. So going forward, I'm going to try to avoid that, but we do need this work done. It's urgent that we get some of these grants off the board so we can continue to apply for other grant programs. So that being said, what we do is on a routine basis, we fund these accounts annually. And when we do have enough money in that pocket, we can do a dredging project or something like that as necessary. And if we have to create a new CIP account for a special project, then that's something we discuss with council when the time comes.
I see Commissioner Bashan asked you at that point. He said, what's a rough dollar amount on that? And you mentioned you don't have a guess yet.
I don't know that right now.
Did I ask
Well-
that before, Alan, or how did you know I was thinking that?
It's in the minutes.
Oh, okay. I forgot. I was gonna ask again, though,
Yes,
All right, so to give you a rough
Now-
idea how that cost estimate would be arrived at, we would dig up the plans from the last time it was dredged. And we'd say, okay, they dredged to X many feet down. And at some point, I send somebody out in a boat and they take some depths and find out what the current level of sludge is in the bottom of the pond. And we figure out that volume of how much material has to be removed, dewatered, and disposed of, and that would generate the cost. Now, I don't have those kinds of figures at my disposal right now. The area of the pond, the depth of the material to be removed, et cetera. When we start actually thinking about doing this project, these are the things that we'll do. We'll get that volume, we'll get that cost estimate for that. And at that point, I would have a real answer for you.
have you seen any dredging projects in the last 10 years being done in your travels?
I can tell you that I've seen two in Meriden. And I mention that because I lived there and I saw them personally. There might be
Is there-
more. Paul was the director of the community development down there at the time. So how many dredging projects in Meriden?
Multiple large projects. There was a smaller project for it was Hubbard Park. And that was the one that I believe you could probably reach out to Brian Ennis
Okay.
from the city of Meriden.
I remember they did one in the, I think it's Baldwin Pond over near where I live. And that was completely drained it and then excavated out, got to be 25 or 30 feet of fill. I shouldn't call it fill. It was sediment over a large period of time.
Here's what I'm
And that-
alluding to, Chris. It sounds like a very messy project. How do they contain all this? And I would think there's quite a disruption being done around the pond as this dredging is going on. What have you seen in that light of it?
Well, I can tell you this as sort of an example. The last time that pond was dredged, and this is hearsay because I wasn't here for it, but the material was removed from the pond and it was spread out to dewater and then ultimately left in the area that is the soccer fields at the south end of the park. So the reason that those soccer fields are nice and high and flat and level is that's where all the dredging material went.
You're talking about this mill pond.
Yes.
Yes, I was here in the area when that dredging was done and spread out, as you're saying. It was quite a mess. I was
Yes.
wondering if there's any other, means of doing it that isn't so disruptive and out there. Could you look into that and see if there's something that's being engineered now that's a better method?
Yeah, we can look into it. From my experience, it's typically either a suction system or a drag line or a drain and scoop it out with, front end loaders and dozers. They all have their pluses and minuses. The suction system, you don't drain the pond, but you are, basically disposing of the material in a liquid
Containment.
form somewhere. You have to dewater it before it can be dealt with. The drag line system is okay, except that it's a very big machine and it doesn't care what it drags. So if you're trying to be a little more environmentally sensitive, that's not your best option. So yeah, when the time comes, we can look into conversations with contractors. There's one I met at, I'm trying to remember which symposium I went to last spring. It was held over in Southington, and there was a specialty contractor there that this is basically their line of work. I did get their business card. I can't remember the name of the firm, but
Sure.
I have it. So they would be somebody I would turn to and say, hey, listen, we met a couple of years ago. Let's come talk about our project.
Yeah, I think we should take our time to make this less environmentally impacted around the pond and disruptive. Because the pond is being used, it's almost like an international zone now. Adjacent towns are showing up and events are going on even more. And I think less disruption would be better than what we've seen in the past. All right, Chris, we'll look forward to talking to you further on it, and I appreciate it.
Very good.
One point about the pond, how do we know that we had an analysis done? Are we just guessing that it needs to be done, or how do we even know what the extent of it is?
Right now, we don't know anything.
I don't see any.
Just a dis-
outward-
just a
nothing
discussion.
outward That shows that,
Yep.
besides that off gassing or whatever you're talking about.
Well, we do have a contract with a practitioner that's adding chemicals into the
Correct.
pond.
Yep.
So we do know there's a concern of accumulation of algae bloom material and such in there. And of course, accumulation of grass clippings and cuttings and leaves over the years. Because I believe this dredging might have been done back in the 70s. If so, that's quite some time for accumulation to build up to the
Mhm.
point of where it is. Okay, so we'll keep continuing and moving on towards getting a project done at some point. I hope the cost isn't prohibitive.
All right, thank you, Alan.
You're
We're gonna move
welcome.
on to motion for adjournment. Okay, got a motion from Commissioner Lamette, second by Commissioner Conway, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Have a good night.
Good night.
Yeah.
Park